Welcome everyone. This is the Velosio webinar, 9 Ways Services Firms Can Cut Costs and Boost Profits. I'm your host, Michael Camp, and today we're going to take a tour of Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central with its advanced project accounting and show you these 9 ways to get an edge using this solution, and particularly for professional services and project-based companies. Before we get started, everyone will be on listen-only mode, and if you have questions, go ahead and submit them in the GoToWebinar question window, and we'll circle back and answer them at the end. Our speaker today is Jeff Smith, and Jeff is a solutions architect here at Velosio, and our objectives are to show you these 9 ways and how it helps a project-driven firm leverage this product with advanced project accounting to really in concrete ways to cut costs and eliminate a lot of manual processes and get an edge in your market and even boost profits because of the new efficiencies that you'll get. So we hope we can do that for you today. And before I hand it over to Jeff, I wanted to take just a moment to go ahead and advance to the next slide, and we're going to look at where Business Central resides in the Microsoft ecosystem and answer the question, why Microsoft, why Velosio, and finally, why cloud? This solution is not isolated. It is within an entire ecosystem of integrated products and technology with Microsoft. There's a built-in CRM. The product is also on the Azure cloud, the largest cloud platform in the world. Jeff will show you examples how the product integrates with Office 365, Excel, and really slick integration with Outlook. You'll see Power BI, which is part of the Power Platform. That is dashboards, and they're embedded in the system, and some of them come with the advanced project accounting that Jeff will show you. And another tool called Power Automate, Jeff will draw your attention to, that helps you create new workflows. The system also connects to industry solutions that you may need for your industry as extensions, and they are like completely seamless. They do not look like another product. You are in Business Central using that industry extension. And then finally, in that category is the advanced project accounting. And out of the 9 ways that we're going to show you, the last 4 involved project accounting and how this embedded solution can help you also get an edge. So if we go on to the next image, you'll see more of a graphic of the whole solution and all the major series of modules. It's not only for project-based activities, but also, of course, covers financial management, CRM, supply chain management, service orders. There's a manufacturing series, and of course, project management, which would include advanced project accounting. And one more click will show us all the modules that come with that particular extension that you're going to see today. And Jeff is going to give us an overview of these kinds of things in the last 4 points of the presentation. So with that, I wanted to address one more thing, and that's why Velosio. And we like to say that there are 4 pillars of things that we deliver to you if you decide to engage with us just to evaluate a solution or just eventually to implement a solution. We're going to simplify your journey with experts that use plain language and get you going. And if you click one more time, you will see a example of one of our clients who said, hey, the implementation was really easy with Velosio. It flowed really well. We helped them stay on budget. So that's what we do for you. Number 2, we deliver fresh ideas and innovation. And that's from our experts as well as within the product. And if you click one more time, you'll see that same client had a experience with the dimensions of Business Central that helped them slice and dice data and to get really meaningful, accurate reports. And that innovation really made a difference for their business. Number 3 is realize business value faster, and that comes from both Velosio as a team and also the product itself. Because it's a cloud product, it implements much faster, and we help you with some of our package services pre-configured to really get up and running faster than you normally would. Finally, there is Gain Insights. You join a community of experts and peers when you come on with Velosio, and you get a lot more insight into how to run your business more efficiently with technology beyond just implementing a product, but just getting into the community. And if you click one more time, you'll see another one of our clients there and how Business Central helped them save time and scale their business. So finally, before I hand it over to Jeff, here are the 9 ways that we're going to take you through. I've already gone through giving you some context. I'm going to start with number 1, and then I'm going to hand it over to Jeff to do the rest of them. So let's go on to lower cost of ownership in the cloud. And that's you can go ahead and click through here. We'll take a look at that one. That's comparing the cloud product that you're going to see here, Business Central, with an on-premise alternative. And this image really shows very dramatically how the total cost of ownership of an on-premise solution is not always obvious. There's a lot of hidden costs, hardware, servers, IT personnel, for example. There are maintenance costs. The upgrades are very disruptive, often every 3 or 4 years, but then they come, they're costly, disruptive, and there are costs all involved with all of those things that you don't normally see. On the other hand, Business Central is a cloud product, and you will have a very predictable subscription cost, and most of those hidden costs are gone, and you're just paying for the subscription. And when it comes to upgrades, they are seamless, they come regularly, and they are not disruptive. So there's a lot of advantages just by getting in the cloud to cut costs. And if you click one more time, the last point I want to make on this is that if you move from an on-premise system or QuickBooks to Business Central, most companies get a very high return on investment. There was a study done by Nucleus Research that a company had over 500% annual return on investment by switching from, I believe they were on QuickBooks and came on to Business Central. So there's a high return on investment with this product. As you save time, as you get rid of manual tasks, as you'll see that you can make decisions quicker because of the data that you have at your fingertips. So with that, let's move on to way number 2. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you, Jeff, and you can take over. This one is gain quick, easy access to data and metrics. And you'll give us an overview of this all-in-one system, and we'll move through the other ways from there. So go ahead, take it up, take it from there.
Okay, thank you, Michael, and thanks to all of you that have joined us today. We always appreciate the opportunity to spend a little time with you and help create awareness about Business Central. We are monster-sized fans of the product. We think that it is truly well worthy of your time and investment because it does provide a lot of value, as Michael has been talking about. So what I wanted to start off with is with our second point was just the idea of gaining quick, easy access to data and metrics in an all-in-one system. So one of the first things that I'd like to mention to you is that Business Central is a cloud-based solution, like Michael said, but it also is a role-based solution. And so as a role-based solution, what you see and what your visuals are going to depend upon your role within the organization. And honestly, what that means to you is that the system's easier to navigate, and it's really focused on the activities that are most important to you. So as an example, I am logged in today, right now, as a business administrator. And as a business administrator, I do a lot of different things within the organization, anything from sales quotes and orders to purchase orders to a variety of different things. So you're going to notice here that I have action areas that are shortcuts to the things that I do most often. But really, when we get into quick, easy access to data, that's where we start to see some other things. Microsoft has invested in Business Central as its flagship product in the small and mid-market organization. And what we can see here is there are a number of metrics that are available as a business administrator that keep me informed of the things that need to happen or the things that are most important to me. The other thing that's nice is that it does leverage a lot of the functionality that Microsoft brings to the table with the Microsoft stack, as we'll call it. In this example, I'm using what I'll call conditional formatting. So as I look at these metrics, they can be marked in red or yellow or green, depending on where they fall within my expectations of how we operate. So I can come up here to activities and I can actually define my acceptable and unacceptable levels on each of the metrics that are available and visible to me, therefore giving me an indicator when I log in where I should spend my time, where are my areas of risk, and how do I then address those. So these three examples are all in the red zone. So perhaps this demo environment is not the best company to be working for right now, but we certainly know that right away, and we can certainly then work to address it. Down below, you're also going to notice that I have access to what are called tiles, and these tiles are prevalent throughout the system, and what they provide me is blocks of information about different areas of my business. So as an example, you can see I have sales orders, purchase orders, and the like. And each one of these then I can click on and drill into the data that makes it up. So in this example, what you can see is that I have a list of all of my open purchase orders. And so the nice thing about this is that I actually could drill into any one of these documents. As you can see, each one is hyperlinked. I also have a filter which allows me to go in and look at all of my purchase orders, or say, for instance, I'd like to look at just my vendor Fabricam. I've already created a filter that allows me to look at just theirs. I can create as many filters as I'd like, and I also can personalize this screen so the columns that are visible are the ones that are most important to me. So these list views, these conditional formatting options really make the system very useful for me, keeping me aware of everything that's going on at any one time based upon what's important to me. But I can take that a step further. And so there are a number of different metrics that are available to me in more of a dashboard or graphical presentation mode. So what you can see here under my business assistance and insights area is a number of different dashboards that are available. So you can see in this case, I have my top 5 customers by sales value, but I also can look and see that there are other charts that are available. For instance, one based on cash flow. What's nice about these is that I can hover over and see the values for which these graphics are being put together. And in many cases, I have the ability to drill inside to see the data up close and personal. As an accountant, I can get some views that allow me to look at the data in a more precise way as well. So obviously providing me good access as I'm trying to keep track of what my cash value is, my receivables, my payables, my fixed assets. And you have the choice of creating these lists and then having access and visibility to them. One last thing that I'd like to show you then is we also have a tool called Power BI, and I'm going to talk about Power BI again later. But what Power BI allows me to do is it allows me to provide graphic presentations of my data, and these can be embedded inside of Business Central. But Power BI takes it a step further because it is not isolated specifically to Business Central. Power BI has all the opportunity in the world to allow you to have access to other, I would say, applications. Maybe you have an operational billing system or some other type of, or you have a CRM solution outside of Business Central. You can pull those metrics together and provide them as a centralized dashboard. So with that in mind, I then have, some capabilities to come in here and manage these dashboards in a way. And it's really nice because not only can I look at them in the form that they are, but I also can take these, and perhaps I'd like to look at it as a donut chart rather than a bar chart, or I'd like to look at it as a pie chart. So I have right at my fingertips the ability to create metrics that can then be embedded inside of Business Central right at my fingertips based upon my role. So with that in mind, that's kind of the idea of quick access to data. But I'm going to take it a step further, and one more thing I'd like to show you is then where does our advanced project accounting module play in this? So I can come up here to the gear, and I actually can go in and I can log in as these different roles that are available. So as an example, if I'd rather log in, for instance, as a project executive, what you're going to notice is the same concepts are going to exist. The difference is that everything is going to be focused very specifically on projects. So in this screen, and we'll come back to this in more detail, I'm focused on timesheets, expense reports, invoicing based upon those projects, setting up resources and the like. And I can even take it further because many organizations have a variety of operations that they have. So as an example, I also then have the ability to log in, for instance, as a sales or relationship employee as well. So I can go to sales and marketing, click OK. And then all of a sudden what I'm going to see is that I can log in as a CRM user. And I'll be able to see a pipeline and a variety of different things as well. I'm sorry that didn't come up the way I expected. Please forgive me for that. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to our project executive role, and our business manager role, and we're going to spend a few more minutes on a few additional things that are going to be important to this presentation for you. So actually, I think what I'll end up doing is talking a little bit about our ability to personalize the system beyond what you've seen already. So what's going on here is I have some flexibility to standardize my documents and my forms and my input so that they meet the requirements of my organization. So I'll use the purchase order as an example. So when I enter a purchase order, I have the ability to do a few things. So when you look at this screen, what you're going to notice is the first thing the system asks me for is a vendor. So when I pick my vendor, there's a few things that can happen. First of all, I have the ability to have attachments. So documents, I can put in details, I can put in time-sensitive notes. And these can be available to me at any time. But perhaps I don't want to see those right now, so I can actually hide them. So I can adjust my screen from right to left. And then also I have the ability to adjust my screen up and down. So whether I'm working on projects or whether I'm working on financial statements, my input windows are very flexible. Now, beyond that, any of the particular screens that I have that have grids where I'm inputting data, I have the ability to do what's called personalization. So if I go to personalize, click here, you'll notice that I can highlight my grid, and then any one of the different fields that exist on this grid can be hidden if I choose to. It can be moved, so I can move it right to left or left to right. And the other thing that I could do is I have the ability to add additional fields. So if there are fields that I'd like to add, then I simply have the ability to drag and drop those right onto my screen. So ultimately what we're going to end up with is an entry window for purchase orders or payables entries or sales entries that are really tailored to my organization, but they don't require customization. They're simply a tool that individuals within the organization can use to set them up to make sure that they're effective for you. So personalization, as well as the ability to access data, are two of the really important parts of what make Business Central such a great tool. Now, I'm going to spend another minute talking about another bullet point that we have here. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to, and we talked about this, I'm sorry I missed that. we're going to talk about the integration with Office 365 and Microsoft tools. So the first place I'm going to go is back into my Business Central. And I want you to take note of, I have the idea here of Excel reports. There are a variety of ways that I can interact with Excel. One of those is I have some out-of-the-box reports that are available to me. So as an example, one of those reports is an age payables trial balance. And so what I can do here is I can launch Excel. I can then have a templated report that's available to me, and the system can then automatically reach out into my data and create that report for me. So you can see very quickly that I have a very summarized payables trial balance. Now, I also have other ways of going about this, and I'll show you just one more. So if I go in and I pick my sales and I decide that I want to get a list of my customers, you'll notice that I have the ability to go to this page option and I can edit in Excel. And when I do that, what this is going to do is, again, launch Excel. It's going to allow me, and notice it's using Office 365 security to validate me as a user. And it's going to then bring in all my customer data. So you can see here that I have all of that information. One of the things I wanted to point out to you, and this may be simple or not, but say I have a salesperson in my organization and they've left the company. I have the ability to make updates on some of these records. So I can pick a particular customer. I can change the sales rep that's assigned. You'll notice I have a customer called Velosio Test Demo. I've assigned them to a particular salesperson. I changed it from AH to PS. And then I can actually publish that data right back into Business Central. So that's another example of a way that we can interface with the Microsoft tool set. Now, one of the greatest ways to do it is, many of you probably use Outlook today. So I'm going to click on my Office home. I'm going to launch Excel, and this is going to be the cloud version. of Outlook, and this is the cloud version of Office 365 Outlook. I can come in, I can create a new email. I can type in an email address. For instance, I may happen to know that Crystal York is a vendor of mine. I know that she works for Fabricam, and I know that I'd like to send an email to her to update, send her a new PO. And normally I would go into my business system and I would create the PO there, but Business Central gives you even more flexibility. So I can come here, click on the ellipsis, go to Business Central, select New, and I can select Purchase Order. Now from here, what I have the ability to do is actually create the purchase order while working in Outlook. And so in just a moment, the system is going to pop up with the PO screen. Now, what's great about this is that I can expand this so that it's more usable. Again, still working in Outlook, and I can actually complete a purchase order. I can come in, I can select from my inventory. I have the ability to select project number. So perhaps I'd like to tie to a particular project. If not, that's okay too. I don't have to. So I can go ahead and I can go past that. I can then enter the quantity that I'm going to order, and it'll bring up pricing if there is pricing established. From this point, then I can go ahead and I can send this purchase order directly through my email to my vendor, Fabricam. When I click send, the system will then create a templated email. And what will happen is that the email will have a PDF attachment, which will be that purchase order. Now, what you're going to notice is that purchase order is 106013. I'm going to go ahead and click OK here. Just give it a second. All right. And you'll notice that then that purchase order is right here. And these use Word templates, so you can see that there's my purchase order. When I go back into my Business Central, I can go back to my home screen. I can go to purchasing, purchase orders. And then what I can do is I can sort from top to bottom. And now I have a new PO with the appropriate information. And I apologize, that one didn't go through. I had an error in the Outlook, but the idea is if that was a valid email address, it would have gone. So hopefully you see the value of that. So now what I want to do is talk about our next feature. Our next feature is using artificial intelligence to your advantage. So there are a number of different examples, and I just want to talk about one of those. So artificial intelligence is when the system is actually planning for you. It's using business data to provide you with a tap on the shoulder to say, hey, look, here's your situation. It might tell you to order new product. It might give you information or projections on what your cash flow should be based upon what it knows. And so with that in mind, I'm going to go back into Business Central. I'm actually going to exit out of there. I'm going to go into Business Central. I'm going to go back to my home page, and I'm going to go to an area that's called Intelligent Cloud Insights. And so what the system does is it allows us to create a projection of our cash flow. So what you can see is it takes everything into consideration. It takes our receivables, our payables, our liquid funds, our cash balances, any sales orders, purchase orders, jobs or projects, and all of that information gets accumulated so that I can look at it on a daily basis, a monthly basis, an annual basis, and it will chart out what my cash balances should be based upon that. We can also do some things around inventory forecasting and so forth, but I thought that one was the most pronounced opportunity for you to see how AI can really come into play. All right, so now what I'd like to do is I'd like to kind of go down the home stretch with focus on projects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first start off by going back to my settings, and I'm going to focus on being a project executive again. All right, and so there's a couple things I want to talk about here. I want to talk about the idea of streamlining my estimate to project process. Many of you may have a process where you're creating an estimate, and it may be based upon the time that you feel that's going to be necessary for the project, the materials that you're going to have to purchase, etc. And so what Business Central allows you to do is actually create a project in a quote mode. So to give you an example, I'm going to go into my projects. I'm going to go to project number 7. And you'll notice there's a couple things that we're going to talk about eventually here. But on this particular project, I happen to have talked to a company that was a real estate developer. They break their projects down into 3 categories: site selection, entitlements and permits, and construction. And so we created a work breakdown structure to match that. But if you go into the project and you go to the project card, then what you're going to actually be able to do here is you're actually going to be able to set that up with a status of quote. And as soon as that quote becomes is signed off on by the prospective client or the client that you're doing repeating business with, then it immediately becomes a project. Now, the reason I wanted to mention this is because some companies like to actually track cost for the sales process that leads up to a project. And so the nice thing about this is that time and expenses can be entered against a project while it's still a quote. I clearly can't bill for that, but I can and will we'll be able to track those costs. And then when the overall project is done, I'm going to know how much I spent on that project, even during the sales process. I could even set up part of my work breakdown structure could be the qualification phases and so forth, if that's how I choose to approach it. So just keep in mind that a project can be a quote, and then it can be turned into an open project. And at that point, then it's, it really is ready to be, all of those transactions could be set up and can be billed and so forth. All right, now a couple other things I wanted to make sure that we talk about. So the next topic is maximizing profitability with budgeting and resourcing. And so what I wanted to make sure that you're aware of here is that Business Central allows you to budget while it's in a quote mode, or even while it's in a project mode, because you may be doing change orders and so forth as well. The system also allows you to manage a resource base. And when you manage that resource base, then you can assign either resources or resource groups to particular tasks during the quoting phase, and then other individuals can enter their time as is appropriate once the project is kicked off. So that's where I'm going to go next. So you can see here that I have project number 7, but what I'd like to do is kind of go back a step. I'm going to go back to project number 6. And the reason I'm doing that, and this one looks a lot alike, is that I actually have some budget information that's been assigned to this particular project. Now, what's great about the Advanced Project Accounting module is that it gives you a grid that really shows you your status at any one time. It also allows you to define your tasks in whatever level of detail with subtotals and so forth. So if you phase out a project, it allows you to subtotal by phases and then total by the end project. So what you're going to notice here is that I start off with a payment balance. So you can set up scheduled payments if you're doing that kind of thing. You can set up your budgeted cost. And I'm going to just show you an example. So here under site selection, if I click on the hyperlink under the budgeted cost, you're going to notice that I have 2 entries here. These entries are going to show me that I have a particular resource, Bill Arden. Bill, I'm budgeting Bill for 40 hours for the first phase of the project, the site selection project. And I'm also budgeting Mark Collins, who works for Bill, for 8 hours. Now, each of those resources is assigned a value that will ultimately tell me that this is going to be a $4,400 cost. So where did that come from? That comes from the ability to set up resources and assign the individual costs. So here's Bill. And you can see that with Bill, I have the ability to go to navigate and put in costs and also prices. So if we're going to bill out Bill, we are going to be able to track our profitability. At the cost level, I can put in that there is a direct unit cost of $100. Bill cost me $100. Maybe I want to build in a overhead factor for his benefits, and I can put in a percentage for that as well. So say that's 5%. So ultimately, Bill cost me $105 per hour. I can also do this very same thing for Mark Collins. Well, Mark is less status in the project and in the organization, so I can go to his costs. And what I can see here is that Mark cost me $50 per hour, and we bill him at $100. So that's how we came up with the $4,400. And 40 hours at $100 of cost, and then 8 hours at $50 in cost comes up with a total cost of $4,400. So as we go back to our project, all of those things come into play. I'm going to go back to project number 6. Now, as I continue across, what you're going to notice is that, so I've budgeted for each of the different phases. This happens to be a labor-intensive project. You'll notice that as I use resources and as I incur expenses, my total costs will continue to accumulate, so I can actually see where I stand, and then I can get a variance right away. And then I'll have reports that do the same thing. Then you can see that I also have the ability to commit costs through a purchase order or an AP invoice, and then when I post it or receive the goods and services, it will update. But you can see that there's also, I can budget in quantity as well as dollars. So I budgeted that number of hours. And then as I use the system, then what you're going to notice that as I end up entering timesheets, then the system will allow me to calculate how many hours I have waiting for approval or in open journals and so forth. So to give you just one more look at this, this really is leveraging our resources. And then I'm going to go back out to my home page and just show you that we also have timesheet approvals. And we can have up to 3 levels of approvals. And you can see that as people enter their time, as costs are incurred, they're going to show up here. And then we can have individual users that are set up as approvers. So in this case, I can have up to 3 levels. Perhaps I have an individual's manager, I have a project manager, and maybe I have an executive in the organization. You don't have to use all 3, but you can. So in this case, then what I can do is I can post this, and you'll see that it won't let me post it because it's my time. But if this were someone else's time and I was assigned an approval, then it would actually pass that along, and that would then suddenly become actual cost from budget. So in regards to budgeting and resourcing, Business Central and Advanced Project Accounting really provides you with a lot of flexibility. Now, the next topic that I wanted to talk about really relates to the idea of accurate billing with easy time and expense and project costing. So we talked about the project costing side. So what I wanted to do is just take a moment and talk a little bit more then about billing. So projects in Business Central can be set up 3 different ways. Now, the project that we were looking at before, when we looked at number 6, is you'll notice that this column says time and materials. This column could also say fixed, so we can do fixed price and time and materials and percentage complete billing within project accounting. And so we do have quite a bit of flexibility. So, and you can mix and match per task on a project if that's appropriate. So sometimes people will do time and materials on their expenses, but their services will actually be a fixed bid. And so that's an example of how this might all work. Now, when we're going to do billing, we can do that a couple different ways. But the idea is that we can come in and we can go to billing process and we can have the system suggest what we're going to invoice. So now I'm looking at it at a 1 project line, but after transactions have been entered and posted, whether it's timesheets, consumption of inventory, or expenses, they'll show up under the suggested line. And then at that point, then I actually can create an invoice. So I can go to process and create an invoice. Now, there are choices in regards to how we do that. You can see that there's all kinds of different options here in regards to how it's done, but I can go ahead and I can start to create that project. All right, so now what you can see is that this is the invoice number, and this actually uses our normal sales invoice process. And I can actually show you the document. So you can see that there's, in my template, I have work that's been set up, comment lines, and so forth. And then you can see that I have the item that I consumed. And this could be timesheets with people's names and so forth. So the idea is that the system is going to provide you with whatever type of invoice you'd like. And different customers can be assigned different invoice templates. All right. So the next thing I really wanted to cover is talking about project performance. And so there's a variety of different ways that we can do this. We clearly have a number of reports that are available within Business Central and within Advanced Project Accounting to give you the types of information that you need. And so what I was going to show you is 2 things to finish off our day. So first of all, to make people more productive, you have some great flexibility to actually have your employees enter their time, enter their expenses via a mobile process. So perhaps And this will take just a second, so hang with me for a second. All right, so I happen to be a proud iPhone 8 user, and I just wanted to give you a look at what it might look like for someone to enter a timesheet. So what you can see here is I have time, and I'd have to create a new one. I'm sorry about that. But I can see time approvals. I can see everything that I would do within Business Central. So the idea here is that I can enter expenses, I can enter time, all via a mobile device. Now you're thinking, well, what kind of mobile device? Well, it can be Apple, so an iOS device, whether a phone or a tablet. It can also be an Android device as well. Or if you just have a Microsoft tablet that you carry with you, that will work just as well. So the advantages that we have in regards to using Business Central effectively really are very, very important. So, and then the last thing that I wanted to talk about was just being able to manage project performance with analytics. And so Business Central happens to come with 13 different dashboards that are available. And so in Business Central, I have a project overview. And with Power BI, and these could actually be embedded inside of Business Central if you chose to, but we can put in slicers based on dates, project status, who the customer is, a variety of different things. And what's nice about it is it's interactive. So as I highlight a particular project in this case, you'll notice that it redraws itself. If I were to put in a different date range, it would redraw itself. And so I can get these metrics at any time, and I can drill into them at any time. So there's some really compelling information about how I'm doing with original budget, what's left on my budget, price versus cost. You can see some project details here. So here's an example of, you know, for instance, my project budget, my percentage profit, all of these kind of things can all be tracked, and these are out of the box. You don't have to do anything special for them. You can even look at projects, and this is really useful, I think, as you determine how to be more effective on the projects that you do, is you can actually put in and look at budget versus actual by task within a project as well. So a couple other things that are important. Here you can see top projects by margin. This one is focused on project costs. And then here's one focused on revenue. Here's a great one because it's focused on resources. And so what we can get here is we can actually plan our resources, and we can see who's utilized and who's not very easily. So I can actually pick a particular resource, look at their availability, look at hours demands by week, you know, and so forth. And we have some really powerful Gantt charts that will be coming out in our next release. So there's going to be some great project planning functionality that's going to exist as well. So with all of that said, our main objective today was really to give you a good look at Business Central coupled with advanced project accounting. So I think what I'd like to do next is I'd like to turn it back over to Michael and see if we have any questions that we need to field. And if not, at least have some closing comments and next steps.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. A couple questions in front of me are, you talked about percent complete a little bit, but how does that look? Can you actually see percent complete in projects? How does that look in the system?
Well, I don't have a project set up that way, but I certainly can talk about how that gets set up. So when we get into the project, you can see that we actually have the ability to define, let's see, right
Oh,
here,
I see. Yep.
resources, percent complete, items. And as you're looking at overall process for a project, you can determine whether you look at it by resource items and expenses, or if you look at it overall. And then you can also determine what it's based on. Is it based on cost? Is it based on quantity to determine what your percentage complete is? But once you've done that, and you can also do it on just the amount of the contract. So if you got a $10,000 project and you're $6,000 in, then you're 60% complete. So there's a variety of different ways that we can attack the percentage complete option.
Right. Very good. Very flexible then. Okay. Another question is how do you migrate? Are there migration tools from Dynamics SL? And maybe we can address GP and QuickBooks as well.
Yes, there are. We have actually a migration tool for all three of those products, which gives us a big advantage. And while they may be defined and have different functionality, obviously there's data that we want to make sure we bring across. And so we can bring over master records as you'd expect. We can bring over, customers, vendors, items, your chart of accounts. And the chart of accounts we're focused on the chart of accounts today, but the chart of accounts is laid out a little differently in Business Central than it is in SL and GP, for instance. And so, but there is a tool that converts it and moves it across. So that will work as well. So there are ways of bringing data across. I would have to check to make sure in regards to how project data can come across. I apologize, I don't have that off the top of my head, but we certainly can look into that.
Right. Okay. All right. There's one more question. Does the system have access control? How does the system limit access to data for certain users?
Well, so that's a good question. Business Central not only has roles that controls what you look at, but it has permissions, which also determines what you can get to. And so the permission sets allow you to isolate data so that you're only looking at what you should be looking at. So as an example, we can have people that are read only. We have people that can also modify. We have people who have access to reports. We have some that don't. And so there's a variety of different ways that we can define permissions. And the other thing is there is a full license that can then be secured. There's also a team member license that really is more focused on read only, and it's much less expensive. And it can also be used for people that enter their time or enter their expenses against a project. So it's a much more limited license, but it also gives you great flexibility in regards to being able to do those little things that you do, have access to data, but not actually enter data where you shouldn't.
So you could also see some dashboards and so forth, things like reports and so forth, but not interact with the data. Yeah.
That's exactly
and
right.
that's very affordable, the light user
That's exactly
option.
Yeah.
So, okay, I think that's it for questions. Thank you, Jeff. And we want to thank everyone for attending. This is being recorded, so there will be a recording sent out tomorrow by email. And we just want to encourage people, if you want to look at this solution further, these are the kinds of things that we can deliver to you. Just giving you advice, have a discovery session, get a cost estimate to you, and if there's a good fit, we can do a personalized demo, a lot more than what Jeff showed here. Just get right into the more into the depth of the product for your company, what you really need and how it meets your requirements. And as well, we have some fixed fee package services for implementing and training, and ask about that, and also rapid deployment, financials implemented plus advanced project accounting, for example, we can get you up in 120 days. So if you have questions, if you want to start a conversation with us about your journey to next and how we could help you take the next step, I encourage you to email us there at that email or call, or if you're a client of Velosio already, contact your account manager, and if you don't know who that is, just use one of those two contact information there. So with that, again, thanks everyone for attending. Thanks, Jeff, for your presentation, and have a great rest of your day.